It's Daniel.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Google Hangout, the Youth for Change, Hub for Change Hangout. Tom, just to say, it says off air. Fantastic. Yeah, oh, and we're live. Fantastic. So, welcome, guys. This is the Hub for Change Google Hangout. So we've got a couple of guests here. Firstly, to introduce myself, my name is Harry Pinder. Been an activist probably since I was about 15 with UNICEF UK, and I got involved in Youth for Change probably about a year ago during the Girls Summit, which was absolutely fantastic. So I've been working on girls' rights issues ever since then. We also have Catalina and June, who will introduce themselves. So June.
Hi, I'm June. I also work with Harry on Youth for Change, which I also joined after the Girl Summit on ending female genital mutilation and child marriage. I've been a youth advocate for Plan UK. I've worked on various kind of feminist initiatives such as the Twitter Youth Feminist Army. And what I mostly do is I mostly write, so I blog for the New Statesman and I freelance for other places like The Guardian. On politics and feminism and girls' rights issues.
Fantastic. And Catalina, could you give us a bit about you as well?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Catalina Ruiz Navarro. I'm from Colombia, living in Mexico. I'm a philosopher and visual artist, but I work as a journalist. I write for El Espectador, El Heraldo in Colombia, and Sin embargo in Mexico, and I work as an independent journalist.
Great, fantastic. So we're going to go through some questions throughout this whole hangout. It's going to be quite cool. So please, if you have any questions, send them into our Twitter page or comment on anywhere that you need to comment. So I talk about Hub for Change a little bit and the fact that we saw a huge gap in what's happening in what's happening in the youth advocacy network at the moment. So it's really important for there to be a hub for absolutely everyone to come together and share resources on how to campaign on the particular issues that affect young people. And yeah, so that's the most important thing that we're looking at the moment. So just to start off the conversation, the first question I'm sort of going to pose is why is it important to have young people, especially girls, involved in digital media? And maybe June, you can talk a little bit about this because you've got quite a lot of experience in that.
I think probably what's most important is that digital media is it's a different and alternative way of getting young women's voices heard in the society we live in, especially as the internet is becoming increasingly more important, and it's a new way of learning, of sharing things, of advocacy. And so I do think it's important that young people are engaged, just because the way the world has moved, social media is important. Internet forums are becoming more popular, and so I do think if we don't have girls' voices being heard in this medium, then we do leave them behind, especially as a whole, young people contributing to those discussions, feeling like they are involved and moving with the times and not being left behind. And I think that's what's key, that we don't leave girls behind as we move on forward.
Fantastic. Catalina, what do you think? Do you think a very similar thing about the fact that we shouldn't leave girls behind, and maybe talk on how maybe girls are being left behind at the moment?
Well, initially when everything in programming and internet began, this was something for women. Even Cosmopolitan announced that systems and programming was a career that should be for women. And suddenly we realized that there was a lot of power in this, and then we left women behind. And the only way to change this is to include girls from a very, very early age, so that they're not afraid from technology. I mean, you see a lot of women saying, I don't know how to use this, I don't know how this works. And these are very simple things, but we have like the idea that everything that has to do with internet and with technology is difficult and it's something for men. When you start giving this opportunity to girls since they are very young, when they grow up, they won't be afraid and they would just do it. And that's something very important, because we internet is constructing the way we deal with information, the information that is passed. And if we don't have girls involved in this, it's going to be the same machista scenario we have offline.
Mm. And what do you guys think are some of the barriers to women accessing the internet, and maybe some, I don't know, like practical solutions as to what we can do to remove some of those barriers?
I think something I saw was around the time of the general election here in the UK, there was a study that looked at the use of hashtags, so on Twitter, for example, and it was found that the vast majority of people using hashtags were men and not women. And obviously, because the difference there is, like, if I send a tweet without a hashtag, then it goes to my followers, and the likelihood of it being found by another person is quite low. But if I put it under a hashtag, then it's available to everyone. And what they then discovered was that actually a lot of women weren't using hashtags because of fear of backlash, of sexist backlash on the internet, of being told their opinions aren't important, that they don't matter. And I think it's very important that we realize that the internet is kind of reflective of the society we live in. So those same attitudes that people have are what people have towards women in everyday life. I also think a lot of internet education isn't given to girls. I agree with that, Catalina. A lot of people seem to think that the internet was created by men for men and for them to rule. Yeah. And I do think it can be often a very male-dominated space. The difference is social media and places like blogs have given women that opportunity to speak out. I mean, you have, for instance, when Malala was living back in Pakistan with the Taliban, she was a secret blogger for the BBC, and that was where she wrote her experiences about being a girl and living there. So that's a very clear example of the internet giving women a voice. I've done lots of writing online, and I've been given that through the internet. However, I do think there's a problem where women can often feel unsafe on the internet, where men are very quick to receive misogyny and sexism. We have all the cases around Caroline Crowder-Perez here in the UK. You have more global cases of like the women getting kind of slut shamed online, and I do think that plays into play. And I do think coding, STEM, I think it all needs to start from school, and I think education is kind of the root of most of these issues. And I do think if we don't teach girls about technology, then we're really doing a disservice, because that's half of the world's potential we're losing in that medium.
I would like to say that I believe that online misogyny it is the biggest barrier for girls and women to use the internet, because it is very scary and it is very harsh, and there's a lot of hate speech directed against women that is misinterpreted as freedom of speech, because there are laws in every country against harassment and against hate speech. But for example, when I write something and some troll comes to me and tell me I'm going to kill you, and this happens a lot, quite a lot. It's regarded as if it was freedom of speech, and this is a big problem. And for example, in Latin America, it's not just they tell you that they hate you or that they threaten you, is that they have the means to do something against you. So this is very scary, and people don't realize that the environment that women are living online, it's very difficult. I believe that the only way that we can work through this is if we have communities and networks and a lot of people that are paying attention to what's happening, so we can have support groups, and especially emotionally support, because most of this damage is emotional. But I've seen many women and girls just back off the internet because it's a very harsh place.
Yeah, and I would agree, because often I've got lots of kind of rape threats and death threats online, and I take it to the police, and they say to me, well, it wasn't really inciting harm, and I'm like, someone said to me that they're gonna come to my house and kill me, and it's not harm. But then what I think is really interesting is there's a case around in the UK here where a woman has apparently been sentenced for using, I don't know because it's under court review, for using the hashtag kill all white men. Now whether or not that's why they're looking at that, whatever the reasons are, but millions and millions of men go online every day and tell women they're going to kill them and face no consequences. That's a very hostile environment that needs to change.
Yeah.
And something, I think that this, just something little about that hashtag, I think that a lot of these threats have to do with power. If I write to the president of whatever country, I want you dead, like me, I'm just a journalist, I don't have the means to enforce that. But, and most of the time women don't have the power to go through with these threats. But when you get, like, for example, a picture of a gun from some troll in Mexico that's telling you that he's narco, for example, then you're going to begin looking back on your shoulder. So of course we can say everything, and not, if I say kill all white men, I'm not necessarily telling you to kill them. But the importance here is that you have to see who says everything and who receives it, because it's a power play all of the time.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Some very, very interesting themes there, guys, and I think actually this is a really important conversation for us to have. Because I think this conversation doesn't actually happen as much as we'd want it to happen, especially around, I mean, because obviously the internet has presented a lot of opportunities for other forms of sexism or actually like emotional violence against women and girls, and I think that's really important. There's some of the themes that you've drawn on there. So on a sort of lighter tone, how can we use technology as an activism and advocacy tool? So because obviously we're talking, like, after they've been given the opportunity to actually use it, how can it be used to hone some of that change that you were talking about?
Should I go first? Is that?
Go for it. Yes.
Okay.
Go for it.
I think that if there's any example of how technology has being used as an advocacy tool, I would say that Everyday Sexism, so Laura Bates' Everyday Sexism project, is a very clear example of how technology and Twitter and Facebook and the internet have been used as a force for good. So the Everyday Sexism hashtag is, and the Everyday Sexism project, which collects stories of sexism online, has been really influential and kind of just, as at a time when people will say, well, men and women are equal now, they're allowed to vote, they have property, you silly women, what more do you want? Shut up. That hashtag came forward and said, actually, no, women are getting discriminated in the workplace, they're not getting promotions, they're getting sexually harassed on their way to work every single day. So I thought that hashtag has been brilliant, and I think the campaign that they did with Facebook to try and get the whole thing of Facebook rape, so frape completely, and this horrible pictures that were circulating. So I think that's an example of that. I also think, for me especially, I do think Twitter is a really important tool. We've had over the last few years growing up a girl, so showing the barriers that girls face when they grow up, which looked at things such as the hidden shame of menstruation. We've had Yes All Women, which started about the whole thing about women facing sexism every day. So I do think in that way, and I think there was a really cool project that Plan UK did in Uganda, where there was a lot of teacher absenteeism and teachers weren't turning up to school, and so they were able to have mobile phones and were able to call up and say our teacher hasn't turned up, and therefore they could get a teacher to come in for the day. So I do think technology can be used in a really good way. I do wish, though, that we had more women being involved in that process.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I believe that the internet is an amazing place to create communities and to kindle solidarity. And when you say that, for example, when I am being attacked online, what I've started doing recently is just to take the screenshot and show it on my social media. And there's a lot of solidarity and there's a lot of love coming that somehow works like a counteracting the attacks, and I think that is very important. And you start to many of the women that I have in my social media, I may not know them face to face, but we are creating a community and we are living together. We know what our lives are going through, and there are a lot of people there that I may not know in person, but I would feel safe to go to if I had any problem. as long as we start creating these strong communities, when there is trust, when there is solidarity, and where there is love and patience, I think it's very, very empowering. And also, the access you have to so much information and to educate yourself in the things that are really interesting for you, I think opens very interesting spaces, because always knowing stuff that you're interested in is very empowering also, always.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. And just to go on your last point, Catalina, I think it's important for us to actually talk about the sort of this idea of the digital divide, and actually like and how perhaps sort of like the internet can be used, for example, in areas where there isn't that much access, and so what are your thoughts on sort of this idea of is there a digital divide in terms of in the world, and what are some of the things that we could actually like we could do to close that divide?
There is a digital divide, and for example, on my article, I was for the report, I was interviewing a woman programmer, and the things she told me was that you basically had to live like a man to be a successful programmer. First, you start in college, and you see that all of your teachers are men, and they tell you the first class, "This is war. Only the fittest will survive because this is very hard," and they tell you this all of the time in the university. Most women feel that they are at war every time. Every time we go out of our houses, we get shouted at and catcalled, and it is a very harsh environment for women. So when they come to college and they see their teacher, a man also, telling them that this is survival of the fittest and this is like war, this doesn't encourage women. It may encourage men because they are taught to be like, I will do everything on my own and against all obstacles, but that's not the way women are educated. So by the time they finish college, they may have dropped out, and then they have children. This happens a lot in Latin America, and the work hours for programmers, for example, are not compatible with somebody that has a family or has children. So basically what she told me is that she was a very different programmer because she was like a man. So she had to let go a lot of the things that being a woman meant, which in Latin America has to do with having a family, with things like that, and when you find this, of course, women are dropping out of these spaces. So we need to give them opportunities and ways for them to have lives and families, and not feel forced to act and live like a man, fighting against everything. And it should be a more. Those are the little things that will make this a less hostile environment.
I mean, June, I was just going to say, like, obviously, I mean, you being a student and being a woman as well, you've been very digitally active. So how have you found that balance between the two?
It's quite hard. I'm not going to pretend. It is quite hard trying to do all the work I do and still go to school, which is why when I get lots of girls saying to me, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I'm like, it's so important that you finish your education, because there are 66 million girls around the world who are denied one, and they would take anything to be in your shoes right now. And I do think it's important that, you know, education's important. You need to, that's the basic groundwork of everything. But with me, yes, I do find it quite hard, and I think it's important that we teach girls to say no, and we kind of get rid of this guilty complex of, if I don't do this, I'm never going to ask again, they're going to think I'm awful. I do think teaching girls to have that power to say no, because men say no all the time, and they just think, well, you know, I can't do it. But I suddenly think, oh no, I need to, like, you know, shuffle my entire life just to do this one thing. I'm going to pick up on some things that Catalina said. I do think as well that there is a digital divide. I think here in the West we're very lucky that we do have access to the internet most of the time, but I think around the world that isn't the case. And if there's, and again, because the internet is such a powerful tool, that you often can have societies where, you know, women aren't allowed to engage in the spaces and don't have the ability to do so. So I do think we need to break away from that. But then the problem with kind of pitting the world against each other and saying here and there is that I sometimes feel like we forget about the issues we have here. So if I took it back to the UK now and said, yes, there is a digital divide globally, but then if you come back to the UK and look at how many girls do physics at A level, so in the last 2 years of school, it's about 25%, world in the country. So 1 in 4 girls do physics. If subjects like maths, physics, the sciences are important to getting women in technology, in jobs to do with science, technology, engineering, and maths, and they're not doing those subjects, then there are going to be very, very few women. I mean, I think engineering in the UK is only about 6% women, and that's a problem that needs to change, because you can't have an industry that is run by 94% of the people running it are men. When this is the world we live in is 52% women. And I do think we need to kind of encourage women to be able to have to use the internet, because I do think I've met lots of women online, and it's been very supportive, and I have learned a lot from women online. But I do think I think the thing about the internet is it's a space where women can have those dangerous ideas, where women can talk about equality that in lots of societies they won't be allowed to, where women can shout out about sexism, can talk about misogyny, can share those experiences. And I think that's the best thing about the internet. It's that it creates that forum where women can say those things that the societies they live in don't want them to say, because they don't want to listen, even though they know that that's the truth.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, June. And yeah, I guess to sort of play the devil's advocate and say, well, I can imagine there might be some people watching who say, well, why don't those women just choose physics if they don't want to? That sort of, I think you quoted it as 25%. So what are some of the obstacles as to why maybe they're not interested in those subjects and actually that field?
I do think. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. I do think a lot of girls are told that it's just not for them. Girls don't do science. Why are you doing that? Do you think you're a boy? What do you think you're going to do? Do you think you're going to get a job in that sector? And I've heard really quite shocking stories of girls who love physics, but have been pressured to do English because English is a girl's subject and physics is for boys. And I do think we need to get rid of this idea that this is for girls and this is for boys. And I also think when you have a girl who does physics and goes off to university, again, she's the only woman, and then she gets to the job, and then again she's the only woman, and then there's that whole thing of self-preservation. So she might face sexism, she might face misogyny in the workplace because there are so few women. But to speak out about these things can be a problem, because then she might lose her job. For instance, if you take something like law in the UK, we had Charlotte Proudman, who recently said, to a man who went on LinkedIn, which is a place for people to professionally get to know each other, and said, oh, your photo is the most stunning I've ever seen, or something like that, which is wrong in a professional environment. And when she spoke out about it, people constantly, she was trolled online, she was labeled a feminazi, people said they were going to cut off her head from her body and put it in a bag. That's what happens when women stand up against these things. So I do think the culture we live in tries to push women into boxes and doesn't give them the space to make decisions. And until we get rid of this complete nonsense of this is something for boys and this is something for girls and this isn't what girls do, you're going to be alone. How dare you try and break free from the status quo? Then we're never really going to have any sort of equality.
Correct.
I wanted to say that, for example, and reflecting on my own experience, when I was a girl in high school, I was very, very good at math, and I loved it. I was very passionate about it, and I found that, and it was one of the careers I was considering when going to the university, mathematics. But what I thought when I was 17 was, nobody's going to love me, I'm not going to be attractive, and I'm going to stay alone for the rest of my life if I study mathematics, because nobody's going to want me like that. And this is the same thread that you find when you want to be a feminist. They tell you, well, you're going to be difficult and ugly, and nobody's going to love you. And women, all the time, when we want to do something different and break out of those boxes or defend our rights, what we are told is we are threatened with probably a threat that is worse than even physical violence, which is violence and being unloved. And when
Yeah,
you give somebody the option between being loved and having rights, it is natural for people to choose being loved. And this happens to women all of the time. So many of us don't take this sort of careers or these lines of in education, because we feel that if we do it, we're going to have lonely lives. And this is very, very threatening, and it's a very real motive. It's not shallow at all. It is something very deep. And for example, also that when you think of a public man, you think of a politician, but a
of
public
course.
woman is a prostitute. So if
Mm,
you speak in public and you do public work, you are going to be called a prostitute immediately. And
mm,
this also helps you being very lonely, because they leave you behind. They go. This goes against your support systems. You can find rejection from your friends and from your family. And being when facing loneliness, many girls don't do these things, and we have to tell them that they will be loved and cared for, and they will be happy any path they choose. And I think this is something that is very important to reinforce.
Yeah, I also think allowing girls to kind of confidently make choices about their own lives,
yeah,
and I do think that choices are never made in a vacuum. So when I hear from lots of women who say, "Oh well, it was never really for me," and I think, well, it might have never been for you. That's fine, but lots of women might have dropped out because they just couldn't cope with the environment and how hard it was. I do think there's a lot of kind of shaming of women's choices, so shaming of women who decide to stay at home and be mothers, and shaming of
Yeah.
women who decide not to have any children. I think until the society we live in stop judging women on a higher standard than they judge men, then we have a really long way to go
yeah,
across all fields, whether
Yeah.
that's women being a politician. She'll be judged on not only what she says and how she says it, but then what she wears, how is her makeup, who did her hair. Whereas a man, you don't ever hear at the end of like a leadership contest, oh, the four best dressed male politicians and their ties, something really ridiculous like that. But for women, you do, and there's an added pressure of like, she's a woman, running for women, for instance. Sheryl Sandberg, CEO of Facebook, she gets so much more criticism. I mean, a woman trying to do something, so she said, women should lean in, and suddenly everyone's saying, but she hasn't talking about, this type of woman, she hasn't talked about that type of woman. I think, but she is one woman. There's only so much she can do, and I do think we need to kind of create the world where we have multiple women and multiple voices. Because if a man says something, most people just think, oh yeah, he said something and it's important. People don't suddenly say, but why haven't you considered A, B, C, D, E, F, G, X? And that's what women get, and that can put women off
yeah.
speaking out.
And I think what you guys are touching on is actually the whole reason why we're having this Google Hangout is actually because the internet has a power to be able to change all of those perceptions, as well as the stereotypes that I think some of you are talking about. And even I mean even coming from a male perspective, which is quite ironic due to the chat that we're having, but it's interesting because actually, for example, if I turned around and said I was studying nursing, that would be seen as something like it'd be weird, and people would say, "You're doing nursing? Why?" Or health and social care, or childcare, or something like that. It's seen as a very feminine, sort of idealistic, and that's why, for example, even in the UK, they're struggling with finding male primary school teachers, for example. Again, and there's a huge shortage of male primary school teachers and a huge shortage of male nurses, and these things are needed, but unfortunately, there's this sort of again, these are the stereotypes that we're talking about. These are the things that are actually painting and again creating that internet divide, which again is and that digital divide, which what we're saying is actually the internet has a potential to change all of this, and actually has a potential to give particular, and again especially women, a voice which they never had before potentially. So in light of all of this, like I guess there might be someone watching who says, well, like I want to get involved. Like, are there any initiatives that that are working on making sure that girls can actually be engaged in working or in within the internet or working digitally?
Yeah, for instance, Youth for Change is a really good example, just because I love Youth for Change, of young people and young girls fighting for gender equality. Actually, the first ever kind of thing I did was I joined something called Girls Globe. So that's, again, a purely digital magazine for girls and women, which looks at women's issues and talks about them, and really gave me a space to kind of find my voice and to write and to blog. And so yeah, those are two perfectly good examples.
Fantastic.
In Latin America, we have a lot of stuff going on. I wouldn't want to name specifically because I don't have enough time to do justice to them all. But you can see women in Latin America working on how to facilitate access to technology to girls and cell phones, and how to help them program, and how to create communities that open spaces for them to write in a secure, safe space. And I think it's something very, very exciting. We are probably we're not going to see these results immediately, but the generations that are coming are generations of strong, amazing, prepared, curious girls that are going to change the world. And this is very exciting from a Latin American perspective.
Yeah, I do think we have something that I like to call Generation Girls. So I do think we have a new generation of girls who just aren't going to take it anymore. And a lot of them are really quite angry. And the thing I find really funny is when people say feminists are so angry, like, they just never shut up, like they need to calm down. I'm like, well, aren't you angry at the state of inequality in our world? Why should I be passive about that? And I do think this next generation we have of girls are smart and they're intelligent, and I think they know what they want, and they aren't afraid to say no. I won't get married when I'm 15. I won't have FGM. I am going to go to school. I am going to do this. I'm going to become a doctor, a lawyer. I'm going to become the Supreme Court judge, and because that's what I want to do. And I think it's really heartwarming to see that, and the internet again can play a huge role in that, for giving them a space to find their voices.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Again, like some very interesting themes coming out of that. And again, talking about the importance of the internet in harboring that girl generation that June was talking about, and actually giving them the opportunity to be able to see the change that they want to see. And I think that's going to be really important, especially for that generation, because I guess this is the first full generation of the internet, which is quite scary, actually. So again, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how, and again, we need to make sure that those spaces are open. And I think that's for them to be able to harbor that. I think Hub for Change, as well as Girls Globe, again, are very good ways to open up that conversation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some question and answers from the internet, as well as we've got some friends on the Hangout as well. I've seen a little smile from them already. So yeah, if we do we want to kick off with one from? Would anyone like to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Could you introduce yourself?
My name is Francis Guess. I'm a member of the Youth Advisory I'm a member of the Youth for Change panel in Tanzania.
Fantastic.
My question is, the way when you were young, when you were still child, when you were very young, we always given gifts, different gifts. You find that a girl is given a gift which is different from a boy. For example, you can find that a girl is given a pistol, a gun, a toy gun, and then a girl is given a toy baby. Do you think that contribute to the gap between men and women? When do you think that has an impact? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I do think we have this problem with girls' toys and boys' toys. So I find it really interesting where you go to aisles and you have on one side just lots of pink fluff, and on the other side you have doctors, you have toy doctors, you have engineers, you have all these different career options that boys can be, and then you go on the girls talk and you see how to make yourself beautiful, a kitchen, you know, princess dresses and all of that. And again, yes, I do think that's important, because, you know, if you're a girl and you say, well, mummy, I want to have a pink gun, or I want to have a pink, I don't know, fire engine truck, and then it's a lot of effort to find one.
Yeah.
And I think and I think that's because even with the toy industry, there's huge amounts of gender stereotyping. And I do think we need to let toys be toys. We need to stop kind of creating these are toys for girls and these are toys for boys, because, you know, if a little girl only sees that the only opportunities that are available to her is that she can be a skinny princess who cooks and takes care of people, but those other options aren't explored, then she might well just grow up and think, you know, yeah, that's what women are here to do. And it's even like in the media, if all the media has is hypersexualized pictures of women that perpetuate the stereotype as second-class women as second-class subjects. You know, if you tell a group of people that they are lesser than another group, that they are worse off, that they're never going to be as good, there will come a point where they will start to believe it and they won't challenge it anymore. And that's why we do need to break away from all this gender stereotyping in everything, in toys, in schools, you know, with teachers saying that's for girls, subjects for boys, in the media, in politics. We need to get rid of that and just and stop trying to mold women into what society wants them to be and allow them to defy that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, June. Does anyone else have a question? Maybe Jolly?
I have one.
Sure.
Hello, my name is Dakanita Maisha. I'm a Youth for Change Bangladesh panel member. And what I wanted to ask is, you know, there is the thing about digital divide, and here in Bangladesh, there are not many people who are using Twitter and blogs, for example. So when we start like a movement or something, when we want to reach, you said that we would need a strong community, women community, so that we can, when we are cyber bullied or someone attacks us online, so there is a strong protest going on. So in Bangladesh, there are not many bloggers or women internet users that much active participants. So what do we do when we start a movement? Where do we go to? How do we handle that? If someone opposes us, if someone attacks us, harasses us, or something like that. And how do we reduce this digital divide here in Bangladesh?
I believe that something that it's amazing from the internet is that your community and your support community doesn't have to be specifically where you live. You can have a support community all over the world, and this is very important. For example, you can, if there's not enough women on the internet in Bangladesh to make a strong community, you have everywhere else, and you can call for international action if you're in real trouble, and you can find all those spaces, and this is going to make and I believe that feminism is unstoppable, and women are going to claim the internet, and this is going to be more and more women every time. When I started writing, publishing the newspaper 9 years ago, I was the youngest and one of the few women writing a column in the newspaper, and this right now, for example, the newspaper finally realized that this is wrong, and they are trying to get more women writing. But it's not just because they suddenly became like good people and they're suddenly interested in women's rights. It's not just that. Economics are changing. Women are having economic power, and they are pushing for more women to be writing and to be working and to do things like that. And I think that this is very, very important, because you can talk, but at the end, most people just are doing a business, and we have and women more increasingly are having the power to push and to make economic and and to have the resources to get more women in every industry. And this is happening. I can see it happening like in every line of work. And I feel that it is very important, because sometimes people will agree that okay, yeah, women should have rights, equal rights, whatever, but they don't sell newspapers, so they won't hire you. But this is changing, because women are reading, women are buying, and women are a very important economic force. And as soon as we realize that, we will be able to open more spaces for women.
Yeah, there was a study that found out this week, I can't remember what it's called, but that involving more women in the workforce in general could contribute $28 trillion globally. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah, so.
Fantastic. Yeah. Anyone else have any other questions?
Hi.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
So who should it be? Should I go on?
Yes, go on. Go on, Yoli.
Okay, I'm Jolly. I'm Jolly from Bangladesh. What I would like to ask is that we have been talking about what are the importance of internet for the girls' rights, women's rights, and everything. But at the same time, we also need to discuss about how this internet and social media is victimizing the girls or women. Because in Bangladesh, we have seen that these days, girls are more victim of cybercrime rather than boys. And it's true that technology is a blessing, but at the same time, technology may turn to, something really horrible for a few person who doesn't know how to use internet and how to use technologies. So, what do you think that how we should, how we should increase this awareness among the girls, that what should be written in the internet, what should be shared, and what should not be shared? I think we need to discuss on that as well.
I would like to answer that. There are a lot of threats, very dangerous and very real. For example, in Medellin, Colombia, girls' virginities are being auctioned online. They actually, the cartels, they kidnap. They start looking at the girls since they are very little, and they come to their families and they threaten them. So they take care of the girls. With this, I mean that they don't have sex ever. And when they come, so they, for example, when they are 11, they kidnap them, they take them away, and then they take pictures of them, they upload them to the internet, and they auction them their virginities using like PIN numbers and things like that. And this is horrible, terrible, and it is. And I mean, when I was doing this story, reporting on this story, it really broke my heart to see how vulnerable they were. But there's something that we need to know. These threats should never be an excuse to keep girls out of the internet. It is a very dangerous place, but so are the streets, and so are our workspaces, and so is everywhere for women. And we have to be prepared and teach them how to recognize potential threats and potential harassers, and to teach them to see the signals the same way that we know how to see the signals on everyday life. If a creepy guy comes to talk to you in a bar, you will leave, you will see that this is something that it is out of the ordinary. And if we teach girls how to recognize these small things and navigate their worlds, this is very important. And never, I just want to emphasize again that it is a very, very dangerous place, as every place is for women. But what we have to do is to learn how to navigate that, and to learn how to protect ourselves, and to learn how to call in for help and networks of solidarity. Because if we just say, this is too dangerous, I can be harassed, killed, raped, sold, if I go on the internet and I just leave it, it won't ever change.
I also think I'd add to that and say that we also need to get, as a society, to change. So as a society, we need to stop sending harassing threats to women, to stop selling girls' virginity on the internet. And I do think men have to be allies in this movement to stand up and say, no, this is unacceptable. And I do think if horrible things happen, then we need to not blame girls and say it was your fault, you were here, you were there, you shouldn't have said that, you shouldn't have written that, you were asking for it clearly, what did you think was going to happen? But rather begin to lay the blame at the feet of the perpetrator and say, actually, even if she was walking around at 3 a.m. in the morning completely naked, she was never asking for it. If she dares to write something that that challenges the status quo, she's not asking for death threats or asking for rape threats. And I think we need a societal shift in attitudes to ensure that girls can participate in these spaces and feel safe, because like Catalina says, we shouldn't have women driven off because they're scared, and the world is a dangerous place for women, and that needs to change. I shouldn't have to feel scared that because I've written something that I'm going to get a rape threat and I'm going to have to go off Twitter for 3 days because I don't want to have to deal with the consequences of me saying that sexism is wrong. That shouldn't be something that we should be having to deal with in the 21st century.
Yeah, and I think actually just to answer the question as well, I think it's important that places like the Hub for Change actually have a part where it actually educates girls about what data to share and there should be an education element to it as well, because I think that's really important when it comes to navigation of the internet. And we definitely haven't sat here and said that the internet is sort of the holy grail and is completely perfect, and there are some very dark parts of the internet. But what we're saying is that the internet actually gives an opportunity as well, and it actually does give the opportunity for those to be able to make a change and to actually do things. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. This has been a fantastic call. I think I'm right in saying that this will actually be available to watch at a later date as well. If anyone missed it or anything like that, just the opinions and the views that we've said have been absolutely incredible. And I'm just going to invite Catalina and June to sort of have some ending remarks in terms of what they want to leave people with, and then I'll do some closing statements. So June, do you want to go first?
Yeah, why not? Gosh, what I want to leave people with. I think what I want to leave people is with the idea of I cannot be what I cannot see. So, if we don't see women in technology, then I do think a lot of girls will think that isn't a space for them. If we don't see women as engineers, a lot of girls will think that isn't a space for them. And I do think representation in all spaces, whether or not that's on the internet, offline or online, is important. I think governments need to take things more seriously. I think women should be able to report, threats online and have them taken seriously. And I think we need to start having proper action on these things. We need education. We need to bring girls into these spaces to nurture their talents. And talking is also important about these issues because we need to have conversations. So in suffragette style, deeds not words, but I'd also say deeds and words now in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And and Catalina, if you want to go for it as well.
I believe that things are very hard, and we still need a lot of rights to claim worldwide, and we have a very difficult situation for women. But what I would like to say at the end is that this is going to change, and feminism is unstoppable. It is gaining spaces in every country in the world, and women are going to back off. I think that every day that passes, women as a whole become a stronger community, and we realize the problems that we face, naming them is very, very important, and this is going to change. We are 52% of the population, we are the minority, and we are coming to get the power and the opportunities that we have, that we should have had always. And this is something that it is very exciting. We are seeing change happen, and it's going to happen sooner or later all over the world, and we have to keep this hope in our hearts because it is something very powerful, and that's mainly. what I wanted to.
Yeah. And if I could add one thing, it's a message to girls generally to be rebellious, to do the things that people think that they can't do, to break away from that status quo, because there are so many of us and they can't possibly stop every single one of us. It's impossible.
Fantastic.
No.
And they definitely can't. And again, some closing remarks from me. I think this has been a very insightful conversation for both me and I think for everyone. And I think it's really important that actually men and boys are involved in this.
Yes.
So I'm really glad that Francis is on this, because actually we are, we're advocates for change as well, and we can actually help that process to make sure that these stereotypes aren't going to be the status quo in the next generation. And actually, whether you're 50 years old or 6 years old or 15 watching this, actually it's really important that your voice counts. And actually, as a man, we can do a lot to do with this digital divide that we've been talking about today. So thank you very much, everyone. So this is the official launch of Hub for Change. And again, like we've talked about on this, I mean, this is a great platform for people to come together and to actually learn about the internet, actually see, use the resources, connect with other young people who are doing incredible campaigns within their countries. And again, a great tool for women as well as men, as well as boys, to be able to come together and to make a change, especially within FGM and early forced marriage and within gender issues in general. We wanted to give a special shout out to the Girls Not Brides campaign, which is my life at 15. I'm going to change the camera now and show you a picture of me when I was 15. And you'll see that I wanted to be a basketball player. So that is my picture at 15, and I'm about to post that soon. Again, great campaign about talking about the fact that what would you be doing at 15, and the fact that we're actually lucky enough to be able to, we had the choice at that time. And again, our Youth for Change partners in team members in Bangladesh have just done a campaign called Let Her Shine. So and again, that campaign is all about giving the opportunity for girls to learn about to learn about the internet, and again, giving them the opportunity to be their advocate and that change maker. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Again, like I said, thank you very much, Catalina, for joining us all the way from Mexico. And again, thank you to all of the Youth for Change members who are on here as well. Thank you so much for your questions, and we look forward to hearing a lot about what Hub for Change is going to do in the future. And thank you very much. Also, thank you for Tom for being the silent digital guy on the side. Who no one hears, but yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And we'll definitely be using Google Hangout again, so please stay tuned. Thank you.